If you're thinking about having an art show but are concerned that the cost of doing so is prohibitively expensive, that's why I am here today. I have figured out a way to do a series of 10 paintings for under $100. This is the first of a couple of videos that specifically target the idea of getting started with art shows and things to keep in mind in order to set yourself up for success. And of course, one thing to consider is price. So what I've done is I have a chart of 4 different scenarios: the absolute cheapest, which is less than $100, and then still budget, and then kind of medium, and then luxury, as expensive as you can go. And I was able to add up to over $1,000 to do that same series of 10 paintings. The series is for 8 by 10 on canvas, and I will show you the numbers with a few comments about some things that I think would also be helpful. First of all, I want to talk about scenarios that I have seen in the wild just this weekend where the material cost was quite low. The first one, I actually bought a piece of art from this person this weekend. I was at Ballard Books during my neighborhood's art walk, and he had a few artists that he was showing around the bookstore, and I found a piece that just instantly caught my eye, and I wasn't sure. It almost had kind of a young vibe about it. I thought, oh, was this a younger person? And in fact, it was painted by an adult musician who has just gotten into watercolor. But this was called Cat Hotel, and then in the doorway, he's written in Greek, Cat Hotel. His name is Cole Cribbs, by the way, and he's also from Oklahoma, like me. Anyway, I thought, oh, this is so cute. And then I just could not get over how wonderful these little kitties are with their different worlds. Some of them are involved in illicit behavior, and others are just musicians playing music. There's a nap, there's some incense, this one's playing video games under a disco ball. Yeah, there's a family up there. You know what? Oh, and look at the bricks. Can you see this? Hold on a second. Think about how long this must have taken him. This was watercolor on paper, and I bought it for $25, which to me felt like a steal. I was all over it. I love this. I keep thinking about it. And it's not what you would call, it's not like a painterly painting. It's more like a punk rock illustration, comic vibes, but it has heart and, interest. Do you know what I mean? So this guy bought watercolor paper, and he obviously had some kind of pencil. I think that those bricks are painted with a very fine tipped brush. So probably this painting cost about $1 to make if he were making multiple paintings, like if you bought an expensive fine line brush, then that probably costs, $5 to $10, but he also had a lot of paintings. So yeah, I would average it out to be, that's probably $1, maybe $2 tops to make that painting, and he sold it for $25. So that is, I don't know, it's quite a profit. Of course, it took him a long time to make it, which is one of the charms about it. It's clearly something that took a lot of care and thought to do, and humor. Also this weekend, I saw some paintings by Kate Powell, who is somebody that I was in the painting atelier with. And she has always, since I first met her, has always painted on cardboard, which there are a couple of really famous painters who painted on cardboard as well. And So she's in good company. There is something kind of punk rock and DIY about that as well. And of course, it's just very affordable to do it. It's kind of lower stakes. I think at the beginning, she was painting with acrylic on cardboard, and now she paints with oil on cardboard. But she also uses canvas and wood as well. But the piece that I saw this weekend was so cool because what she had done was she painted on the cardboard, but then around the edges, she made a frame with more cardboard, and it looks really cool. I imagine that did not cost her very much to make it all. Now, she's probably charging a lot more than $25. I know she's charging a lot more than $25 for her paintings because she is a professional artist. She just graduated from grad school. She just received an MFA in painting, and she's also an alum of this painting atelier, and she's been painting for a number of years. So that's a different vibe than Cole's painting. So it really depends on your context. And the next video that I'm going to do is going to talk more about your context and what you plan on painting and setting yourself up for success that way. So here's the main idea. It's an early in your career situation. You're selling artwork for the first or second or third time. You're using affordable materials. And so, of course, you're going to charge a very affordable price in order to get this feedback loop going. And then you would sell your work, you would make a little bit of profit, and then that gives you some money to then buy some more art materials, perhaps even at a little bit higher quality. And then you just continue to level up as you go. This spreadsheet covers costs about planning and painting paintings. So it doesn't include the costs for having the show itself, because I would consider things like invitations and or thank you cards and perhaps some kind of snacks or drinks, refreshments, that kind of thing. But for now, we're just talking about the paintings themselves. So my categories here are theme and artwork planning, then the materials for the paintings themselves, wiring and hanging, and then storage and transport. So let's go through this. For theme and artwork planning, I believe in having, if you're going to do a series, and in this case, we're talking about a series of 10 8x10s on canvas using acrylic paint. And I'm doing this as a thought experiment. I think that a lot of this you can extend it to a different medium as well. But for theme and artwork planning, I personally would have a binder and paper to keep all of my notes and my studies and everything together for that show so that I could have it all in one place. And so you can get a binder for free if you already have one around your house. You just take whatever is in there, take it out, and then put some paper in there. And but as far as actually painting, of course, we think about when we go to the art supply store and walk out thinking, how did I spend all that money? Oftentimes it will have something to do with the cost of paint. So I went through different paint scenarios and I decided to not include house paint or craft paint, even though I know that people have done actually really cool work using either house paint or craft paint. But for here, I'm just choosing artist grade paint that I feel like would still do the trick. So the least expensive set that I found that I felt like would still do a good job was the Winsor Newton Galleria acrylic set of 10. It'll have a basic set of colors. I think it has everything you need generally, and that's for $14. Now, if you scroll through, my golden paints is what I usually use in general. There is a mixing set of 12 colors that you can get for $43. And this particular group of colors, looking through it, is, I think, ideal in terms of getting the greatest gamut of colors from the least number of tubes. So that's $43. I was able to find it. And then I went through and did my most used colors in my own world. And if I just bought those tube by tube, that would cost me $127. But then I went for the most luxury version, and if I used all the colors that I really reach for, you know, I have more than these even, but this would be all the ones that I definitely use, and I would be cranky if I didn't have it on hand sometimes. That's $308. So that's a real range. If I were in a scenario where I had absolutely nothing and I knew I had to work on a budget, I would totally buy that Winsor Newton set. In fact, I almost want to try it. Like, maybe I will. Anyway, brushes are tricky because you can get away with using cheap brushes is the thing. There are some problems with using cheap brushes. One thing that especially bothers me, and I do use cheap brushes all the time. I use cheap and expensive brushes. But with cheap brushes, two things that I don't like about them. Number one is that bristles just come out, and so they'll land on your painting, and then you have to deal with them. That's annoying. And then the other thing I don't like about cheap brushes is that they don't hold their shape as well. And so after you've had them for a bit, you're trying to have a controlled brush stroke, but there's extra little bristles kind of splayed out and giving you maybe not the look that you're going for. But sometimes you are going for that and you kind of want a more scrubby brush stroke. So, you know, sometimes that actually works in your favor. The way my practice works, I do need a lot of brushes at all times because it helps me work faster to sometimes just go, I'm using this, all right, and I'm just gonna set this in the water and I'm gonna start with a new brush and clean them all at the end. And that has to do with my own style, but you can get away with using just a small set of brushes. And so I chose this one, the Princeton Real Value Set is 4 brushes for $5. And then you're also going to need utility brushes for your gesso and your varnish. So the Blick Essentials Value Brush looked like a good deal there for $5. Now, looking over to the very right-hand side, you can, wow, you can spend a lot of money on brushes, and I didn't even go with the ones that are like so expensive, but I looked at the Trekell Professional Artist Brush Set, and that is, I think it's 6 brushes for $60. Honestly, $10 a brush is like, whoa, but it's also, I have seen brushes cost so much more than that. Oh, and if you wanted to have a luxurious bristle brush set for varnishing and gesso, you could use the Escoda. So instead of spending $5, you could spend $18 on your 3 brush set. Okay, now let's talk about canvas or panel, because that's another place where things will add up quickly. What I have found is that when you have a really cheap canvas, you can tell by the feel. It's really lightweight. It's not as sturdily made. Sometimes it isn't wrapped as tightly, and the gesso job, you know, the pre-priming that they do isn't as good. So oftentimes I'll have to pre-prime some more with my own gesso. Generally, I try to add a coat of gesso before any pre-primed canvas, but that's my deal. Because I've had a couple of things come up where I sort of wished that I had a better barrier because of some discoloration. I found a set of 10 canvases somewhere else for, I think, even less than $13, but Blick Super Value Pack of 10 for $13. That's a great price, and it's fine. One thing to consider though is if you order from Blick the Super Value Pack of 10 8x10 canvases, it is possible, I might even say likely, that at least one of the canvases might be a little worse for the wear, like maybe unusable. So keep that in mind. Maybe even if you could buy it in person, that might be good. But if you can't, just be ready to say, hey, Blick, this one is no good, and they'll send you another one because they're a great company. Next up is Art Alternatives. They have a super value pack for $32, and both this Blick super value pack and the Art Alternatives one they are both the 3/4 inch depth. So they will not look particularly extra nice, but you can paint the sides if you don't want to frame them. I have an inexpensive frame option if you find that you want to actually have them be in frames. So, but then in the meantime, you could also choose to have the 1.5-ish profile, a deeper profile canvas, and again, paint the sides, and it'll sit on the wall as more like an object than the shallow canvas will. One good quality gallery depth canvas would be Frederick's Red Label, for example, and those are $22 a piece. So times 10, that would be a $220 expenditure. And then at the most luxurious, we have the Masterpiece Monet Pro Art Fix linen canvas, 1 3/8 gallery depth, hand primed 4 times with acrylic, and that will set you back for all 10 canvases $535. I probably would not need to gesso that one myself. That probably just saved me some time. For your consideration. And linen also has a very high status appeal, so you can say that you painted on linen, which I think then raises your price point. All right, everybody gets the same jar of golden acrylic gesso. Sandpaper, same thing goes for that. So sandpaper is for if you are re-gessoing and you want to sand down the surface because you want a smooth surface. If we're going with the least expensive art show, as far as frames go, I'm saying none, and you just paint the sides. And but if you did want to have a frame, you could use this inexpensive Folklore floating frame, which I've used before. It's a composite wood, but it looks surprisingly good and neutral and professional. And some people really like to purchase artwork that already is framed because just for ease, I find that people are more likely to buy things that are just ready to hang. But if you wanted to have a higher quality frame, if you wanted to buy it online, the ampersand solid wood floating frames are good quality. And if you wanted to spend even more money than that, then you would go to a framing store and have them do it themselves, and it would look even more polished. But that's not what we're here for today. We're here to have the cheapest art show that we can possibly do. So now when it comes to wiring, you can get a hanging kit online for $8 that will have wire and the D-rings, and I think even the hangers for you. One thing it doesn't have, but I do recommend, is having bumpers on the bottom corners of your work. That is a really nice finishing touch, and I wouldn't go without that. It's worth it. It's $8. Now you're storing your pieces as you go. I like to hang things on the wall all together as I'm getting a series together, if I can, so I can have them sort of talk to each other and have my eyes on them. But when you need to store them or when you need to transport them, of course you never want to stack acrylic paintings because they will stick to each other. And so you want to protect that surface. Normally I use glassine paper, which really is kind of a lot like parchment paper. I've looked it up, and parchment paper is a good cheap alternative. So if you were wrapping your artwork in bubble wrap to be moved or given to the buyer, you could use some parchment paper as the protective sheet between the surface of the painting and the bubble wrap. And then everybody gets some bubble wrap. The inexpensive one would just be the U-line roll. It's 12 inches wide because that we don't need anything wider than that since these are small pieces and they are perforated. But the more expensive budgets, you could get the eco-friendly roll, which will put you back over twice as much. I have made this spreadsheet to share with you. It has links to a lot of the things that I mention, and this of course is free for you to download. And if you have any questions about any of these items, feel free to put those in the comments. And if you think I forgot anything, also let me know. And because we got to keep this conversation going. I'm hoping that this spreadsheet with its 4 columns of varying expensiveness can allow us to pick and choose. So maybe you don't need to have a show that is less than $100, but perhaps you want to not spend over $1,000. So there are places where you might want to choose a more expensive option and other places where you see that you could get a better deal. I think it would be a really interesting thing to try, to do a series of 10 paintings for less than $100. And I think I might need to accept this challenge. And like, I have offered this as a thought experiment, but now that I've said it out loud, I think I'm gonna have to try it. So yes, I think it's happening. So yeah, what do you think? Hopefully this is helpful to you, and to be continued. Next week, I will share with you some more information about getting some of these early art shows started to set you up for success. All right, thanks, and we'll see you in the next video.